Thank you very much. And welcome to Cats and Dogs here on Press TV with me, Len Topic. And this week, we go trucking and driving around the UK with no fuel. After the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world, now it's time for the fuel shortage crisis to also hit the world. The first country was Lebanon, and the second was naturally the next most vulnerable nation on earth. That's right, the United Kingdom. The solution for this problem could have been the obvious source of good quality energy, the Islamic Republic of Iran. After all, it solved the problem for the Lebanese. But since Tehran continues to live under some of the most illogical sanctions in human history, it is not allowed to deliver fuel to Britain, which is suffering some of the most illogical shortages in human history, considering it's got an ocean full of oil just under the North Sea. But I guess there is still another option. Mohammed bin Salman, also known as MBS, the de facto owner of Saudi Arabia. He can deliver fuel to the Brits on one condition: if he's allowed to buy Buckingham Palace and turn it into a hotel for the detention of any naughty royal from anywhere in the world who's causing trouble. Which would also mean that Harry and Meghan would have to come back and live there too. But I digress. As fuel pumps have dried up, deliveries to pharmacies are being disrupted, and chemists have given warnings that the fuel crisis is affecting supplies of vital medicines to the public. Will anyone notice the increasing problems in the health service in a country where the national meal is fish and chips with curry sauce and mushy peas? Surely the world's most ironic healthy meal. However, this shortage of medical supplies could be causing issues in Downing Street, where there are rumours that there's an increasing shortage of medical supplies to keep Prime Minister Boris Johnson calm and happy, though those rumours have been denied by everyone except Boris Johnson himself. Send that man a heavy goods vehicle delivery of 40 tonnes of happy pills. And if that works, do the same to every household in the country. 40 tonnes of Prozac cuts out the middleman and will do a lot more good than any furlough ever could. Let's get back to basics here. Some experts claim it's wrong to call the crisis a fuel crisis because there is enough fuel. They say the real crisis stems from a lack of truck drivers to deliver the fuel to the gas stations. How can this be? How can the once great nation that ruled half the world now be begging for lorry drivers? It would be like America fighting a whole war to defeat a terror group, only to find itself begging for a deal with that terror group. That could never really happen, could it? Of course, unlike many other people, the British government doesn't consider Brexit as the root cause of the current crisis in any way, shape or form. So they must be claiming this is some kind of fluctuation associated with other factors like the weather. Do they expect us to believe lorry drivers just fly south to warmer parts of the world in the second half of the year? So the current crisis is in fact a natural phenomenon. OK, the weather in Britain has been absolutely rubbish recently, but to think that lorry drivers are now all grazing in the lush meadows of Malta is quite frankly ridiculous. Unless, of course, they've all gone to retire there. But we can still see the last vestige of imperial genius. Speaking from the vantage point of extremely naive political posturing, Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab has suggested ex-prisoners and low-level offenders can solve the crisis. I suppose he means they're the obvious choice now the UK can't use slaves anymore. But let's be honest, are there really enough prison convicts to make up for 100,000 missing lorry drivers? And just imagine if the ex-prisoners can't get out of their, let's call it, old habits. In that case, we'll end up with both a fuel shortage and a fuel lorry shortage. Meanwhile, there are concerns that essential workers, like those in the health and social care sectors, could run out of fuel themselves and be unable to travel to work. What then? I suppose it would mean patients needing treatment will need to give a lift to the physicians and nurses on the way to hospital. Or the patients need to summon physicians a few days before their emergency so the hospital staff have enough time to walk to work. In another twist, all this means that after the vaccine rollout finally gave freedoms to British citizens, the current fuel crisis has taken some of those freedoms away again. Think about it. People can go out because they're vaccinated, but then they can only go out as far as they can walk, or if they're lucky, by horse. If the crisis doesn't improve soon, foreign students are going to have to stay in the UK. because they can't get home. And then they'll have to continue their studies to the highest level of education, only to discover that the jobs available with a PhD are all in lorry driving. And I bet they'll take those, because at least that way they get to use the lorry to drive themselves home. England's fuel crisis is hitting everything, even football. Recently, Millwall striker Matt Smith appealed for help from fans. He tweeted, "Anyone in West London, Chelsea, Fulham area, know where's a good bet to get fuel at the moment? Struggling to find anywhere." The crisis has even made Cristiano Ronaldo's collection of expensive cars useless. But as you know, every cloud has a silver lining. And the silver lining for this crisis? As countries such as Belgium and Norway give visas to, for example, skilled surgeons or musicians, the British government aims at giving visas to skilled drivers. And maybe all you'll need to get a British passport is an HGV licence. Meanwhile, the military has started delivering fuel to petrol stations. I can see the job of being a tank driver change dramatically. Well done, old boy. When we said you'd be driving tanks, we meant tankers. And that makes all the difference. So never mind the warfare. Hop in the tanker there and get yourself down to the gas station pronto. While all this has been going on, Boris Johnson has continued to evade public scrutiny over the petrol crisis and has now been accused of hiding. There are calls urging Johnson to come out of his hidey hole and give himself up. But there are also fears that if he's hiding somewhere far away, like Barnard Castle, if he does try to come back down to London, he could end up high and dry on the Great North Road when he runs out of petrol. If this situation persists for a couple of months more, lorry drivers are expected to form a new elite class in British society, marking the greatest social upheaval in the whole history of the country. To find out more, we decided to talk with one of the future elites in the UK. So exclusively here on Cats and Dogs, we've got a very special guest to talk about an unusual career change. Mr. Kane, I've got to ask, are you a relative of Harry Kane, by any chance, of Tottenham Hotspur and the England football team?
No, I'm the actual Harry Kane.
Are you serious? You're the Harry Kane?
Yes.
Why are you driving a truck then?
I couldn't get enough fuel for my Bentley, and nobody else could either. So we can't get to the club, so we decided to make money as lorry drivers.
Interesting. What's the money like as a lorry driver?
Well, the way things are going, I reckon I'll soon earn more in the lorry than I did on the pitch.
How much is that?
Well, I was earning £50,000 a week. But with the shortage of drivers, I should be getting at least twice that.
So you're pretty optimistic about the future then?
No, I'm just optimistic about my future. As a driver, I expect to be much more successful than the English football team has been over the last 55 years. And the best thing is that as a driver, you try to avoid getting penalties, and obviously the England team is very good at that.
Harry Kane, thank you.
Keep on trucking.
I suppose it makes sense for the England football team to go into a career where they actually get paid to miss penalties. That's all for this week. Join me again next time to find out if Flash Harry Kane's made his trucking millions, if the British military's happy to drive tankers instead of tanks, and whether anyone's worked out where we're running out of fuel in the first place. That's all on Press TV with me, Len Batopic, and Cats and Dogs.